when I was $1.17 or whatever it was in my bank account. You know, if I can operate fine and host an event when I have no money, like I know that anything else like is totally fine. When you're at an event, the most approachable people are actually people in odd pairs. Let's say you go to an event and you see a group and there's 3 people standing there talking, like in this little triangle. If you walk over, it makes the triangle like a complete circle and it feels very natural.
Yeah.
You really don't need discipline to be successful. Like I know this guy and he's like I don't know how he does it. He's going on so many dates. Like it's insane, like 10 dates a week. And he's partying, yet he has this massively successful business. Every time I land somewhere, I don't know anyone. And then I would go to a new place and I just have to restart. Mm-hmm. I just remember opening my journal and like writing like, why do I feel so lonely? And I'm just like crying. I'm like, this sucks. Like, this is terrible.
Can you walk me through maybe in the early days of Entrepreneur House, a moment where you felt close to walking away, like maybe this won't work out, and how were you able to shift back into build mode?
I don't think I've ever said this public, so this is first time I'm telling anyone.
First time on Empanadas.
So this was
Thomas, welcome to Founders and Empanadas.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, super excited to have you on.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Salud. So I've tried almost every empanadas shop in Medellín, and these ones are definitely the best. What do you think?
I would agree. These are pretty good. I'm not a huge empanada guy. Like I don't go out and eat empanadas. But yeah, I would agree. These I think are the best that I've had.
Shout out Ganzo y Castor. You guys rock.
Shout out.
So Thomas, today's episode will be a masterclass in everything networking, and no one better to bring on than yourself. I'm very fortunate and thankful to Thomas because he built the whole Medellín Entrepreneur House group. And Thomas, I would say before your group, I never really connected with Americans in Medellín. I had my first couple encounters with Americans here when I first moved here. They were here for the wrong reasons, and they saw Narcos on Netflix and wanted to recreate that lifestyle, and that wasn't for me. But through your group, I've met some highly curated, amazing other founders in the local community, and just thankful to you for expanding my friend group and community group here in Medellín. And that's all through your networking.
I have to also thank you because you were one of the very first people to actually come out to the events that we did. I think you were at the first event, literally the very first event that we did. I don't remember the exact day, but this was a few years ago. And I believe it was in Laureles.
Yep.
Do you remember that? Yeah, it was in Laureles, and we had like a U-shaped table, and I just basically put it together. I spent a bunch of money. I kind of got scammed, to be honest. The camera person, I think he charged me like $2,000, which I didn't know any better because
that's a lot for Medellín.
It was a lot for Medellín, Colombia. He wasn't Colombian, but anyways, it all worked out in the end. And I just have to thank you because you were there first day, first event, and then you came and you've probably seen the most transformation, I guess I could say, from day one to where we are today. So have to thank you for believing in it and like helping build it as well, because it wouldn't be where we're at today if it wasn't for people like you. So
thank you, Thomas.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So walk me through the journey of how you got through. I know you started in real estate and how you landed with the idea of Entrepreneur House.
Do you want me to go all the way back?
Let's go back.
All the way back. Okay. So all the way back, I guess
we got some empanadas to get through.
Yes, we do. So all the way back, if I were to go like to the very beginning of what you could say is like the entrepreneur journey. Yeah. Started back in high school, actually. So I was obsessed with Minecraft. We all know Minecraft, right? The video game you play and you build blocks and stuff. But I was obsessed with it, like obsessed. Like that's all I did for the longest time. And how did that turn into entrepreneurship? So what I did is I just decided, I don't know why, but I just decided to start recording myself playing the game. And I did that over the course of 2 years. And through those 2 years of recording it and uploading it, editing, doing all that stuff on YouTube, my channel grew and I started making money online, which, for a 16, 17, 18-year-old, making money playing Minecraft or playing video games is pretty damn cool, I think. Right. So that's when I had that shift. It was like, why would I go to college and spend money and like get a job if I could just play video games and make money online, right? And it wasn't like I wasn't like a millionaire by any means. I was making, I don't know, like one video I think I made, like the most I've made from ads was like $700, which was pretty good for one video. And then there was the streaming donations and the sponsors. People would pay me like $100 an hour to stream on their servers. So it was like decent money, but it wasn't like anything like huge, at least compared to today. But back then it was like, wow, this is amazing. So that kind of set me on this path where I was like, yeah, screw school, screw getting a job. Like I'm just gonna find a way to make money online. And eventually I got kind of tired of playing Minecraft, just burnt out, because when you're playing it all day and then you're editing it and uploading, like that's all you do is like breathe Minecraft. And so I kind of got bored after it, 3 years or so. From there, I did actually go to college for like kind of a year, community school. But I knew at the time, like deep down, like I'm not going to go all the way through with this because I know I want to do something different. So I kind of had my own path, like that I was planning, trying different businesses, try to do like web design and learn how to build websites. And then I realized, like I spent 3 months doing that. And then I realized, well, shit, I don't know how to sell. Like I don't know how to get clients. I know how to build a website, but I don't know how to like provide value to so I tried all these different things and nothing really took off or was working. And then what happened was I met someone at Costco. I was working at Costco at the time, like part-time. And I met someone there and he had one of those like, we buy houses. You ever see any of those? It's like, call this number, we buy your house. With cash.
Big QR code.
Yes. Yeah, literally. He walks in, he has a shirt on. And like, I know like, okay, this guy has real estate or he does real estate. And I just had this thought in my head, like most people, millionaires, become millionaires through real estate. Right? I don't even know if that's true, but that's what I thought at the time. And so I was like, let me learn from this guy. So I go up and we start talking and he's buying TVs. I'm in the electronic department and he's like buying these TVs for rental properties. I'm like, okay, this guy knows his stuff. So I get his number and then I start following up with him. I'm calling him. I'm literally like calling him, texting him, like trying to get an appointment just to meet him in person. And he's like kind of brushing me off. Mm-hmm. And then finally one of the days he answers. I remember he's like, what do you want? Like, just tell me, what do you want? I'm just like, I just want to learn from you. And he's like, all right, come to my office. Here's the address. I come to his office. He's not there. I write a handwritten letter. I leave it on his desk. So eventually I get the meeting. 2 hours go into the meeting and I'm just like blown away. I'm like, wow, there's so much about real estate that I have no idea about. And so at the end of that, I was like, all right, this is what I told him. I said, I will work for free if you teach me everything you know about real estate and building a business. And obviously he said yes. And from that, basically I became a profit share in his company. I wanted to start my own agency. So I started being like, hey, I'll build your website and like do this and do your marketing. And, over the course of those few years, I learned a lot about real estate. I learned a lot about business and helping him grow his business. I also flipped my own house at around 21 in Michigan, where I'm from. Used my own money, find the own deal, like did all the work to flip it. And it was like the worst experience. I made like, I don't know, $5,000 or something. I had to split it with my partner. So it was like $2,000 after like so much stress. So I was like, I'm never doing that again. So that happened. And how did I end up doing what I'm doing today? So we were in a mastermind. We joined this group. It was Ravi Avogala, Scaling with Systems.
Okay.
He has like this mastermind. He's based out of Miami. And we joined his inner circle and he did an event in Medellín, Colombia. So at the same time, I was like, I want to travel the world. And I had the ability to work remotely, like from my laptop and stuff, but I didn't actually start traveling. So this is like my excuse. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Medellín, stay 3 months, and then I'm going to travel more. And so I did that. I came here, met a bunch of great people at the mastermind. It was a very like high-end mastermind. I think it was like 40 or 50K to join it. Actually, I met Mike Rama. He was part of that same group. So we met in Medellín from that event. So I stayed for 3 months. Then I traveled for probably about 6 months. And it was like a 2-week period, maybe 3-week period in different city, in different country, in different city, different country. And that was awesome. But the thing that was missing was I was doing it all myself. So every time I land somewhere, I don't know anyone. And then I would go to a new place and I just have to restart. Mm-hmm. And that after 6 months of doing that, you kind of get burnt out. So at the end of it, I remember I was in Turkey and I was staying up till, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 a.m. just because the time zone I was still working on Eastern time. And I remember I get off the call with my business partner at the time because at this point we started another business together. The person I said I'll work for free, we started a separate business, became partners in that. And I remember getting off that call and he was like kind of disrespecting me, or at least I felt like he was. It just wasn't like a great call. It was a very like, when you have those calls, you're like, that was terrible. And I got off of that and just like all of the emotion, like pent up emotion of like being lonely and like really traveling, but just pretty much working the whole time. So I wasn't really traveling. Like, what is the point of doing this? And I just remember opening my journal and like writing like, why do I feel so lonely? And I'm just like crying. I'm like, this sucks. Like, this is terrible. And so it was that moment where I decided I'm going to go back to Medellín. And I came back to Medellín and I just had the intention, like, I need a community. Like, I need to have people that are like-minded, that I want to be around and just not be lonely. That was like my inner intention when I came here. And so I started going to men's circles. I started the Entrepreneur House, which was a co-living at the time, because that was like the most immediate way that I could remove loneliness is by like living with other people, quite literally. Yeah. And that's around when we met, right? So we were doing the co-living. And in addition to that, I started hosting like different events. And that was one of the events that you came to in Laureles. And then since then, I think, the rest of the story, it just evolved over the course of that, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it was, into what it is today. So that's the long story, kind of short.
Yeah,
for
but
you.
I love just the founder problem fit of you uncovered your own, like, hey, if you're traveling as a digital nomad or as an entrepreneur, there is a lack of community. And it takes so much energy to go out and connect with people one by one. And if you have a community you can tap into right away, it just shrinks down that timeline so much.
It's a game changer. My vision was I want to be able to travel the world while having people and friends in different places, because traveling is awesome, but it's even more awesome if you have to do it with people you like and you enjoy company with.
Yeah.
So
I think it's so cool just like being able to land in a new city and right away you've got people you can reach out to and grab coffee with, and they're going to be high caliber and have something to contribute.
1000%. So yeah, it just kind of unfolded. It was never like, I'm going to start a mastermind. It was more like, I'm lonely and I don't want to be lonely. That was basically it. And then, the rest is history. So
amazing. And walk me through the pivot you made from doing the co-living setup of an actual entrepreneur house to the current iteration with more community-based events.
Yeah. So, at the time when I started the co-living, I was still doing real estate. There was a period where I was doing the real estate with my partner, and then I stopped doing it. And something happened in the business where basically we had the company that we were partnered in was called Physician Wealth Systems. And basically it was helping physicians build wealth through real estate, right? So we had this other company that was a residential acquisition company. So we go direct to seller, we would acquire property, and then we would either wholesale it or we would list it and sell it if the market's really hot. Sometimes we would even flip projects if we had a good like margin on it. And so we had this machine to find off market deals and get them at like a lower rate than you could on market. And so we used that to feed the physician wealth systems of basically the doctor would come to us and they would sign up, and it was a $150,000 program that they would sign up for. And then we would help them buy real estate with our other company. And so what ended up happening is we had someone join the program. We had this 30-day money back guarantee, right? And so he joined. And at the time, this was like our second client. So this is like a new business. It was a startup. We only had one other person pay us. And so this is the second person coming in. And I also was absolute noob. I mean, I didn't know really anything about like business partnerships. I've never actually had a business partnership. So I didn't know what an operating agreement was, right? We didn't have one. We just set one up. We set up an LLC and we set up a shared bank account with Chase, right? And actually the idea came from when we were in the mastermind here in Medellín. He's like, hey, I want to do a business with you. I have this idea, because the mastermind we were in was like a lot about like coaching and info products. So he's like, let's try something in that niche with the experience that we have. And I want to partner with you and go 50-50. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And that was basically it. We set up the LLC. And so this client pays us. I also didn't know what a personal guarantee was. Oh. So I set up all the credit card. We set up like this one credit card, American Express. And when I did it, you sign and it's personal guarantee to your name, right? So I didn't know any of this at the time. Operating agreement, personal guarantee, whatever. We had this cash in the bank account. And basically what happened was he requested a refund, but in between him wiring us the money and him requesting a refund, we were like, okay, we got all this cash. Let's start investing in the business. Like, let's go to this event, to this doctor event, try to recruit doctors. Let's invest in, all this stuff. We probably charged up like 30 to 40K on the card because we had like a whole bunch of cash in the account. And then he refunded it. And so what happened is overnight, we went from being net, positive in the bank account to then only having like 10 grand left and like 40K on the card. Yeah. And what also happened in between that I left out is at one point, this was a couple months prior, my business partner was like, the first client paid us. So we started getting all this money coming in. And he's like, I think that I should be earning more money. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we said 50-50, right? And he's like, but I'm also using my other company to help and like all this stuff. And we had this huge negotiation, and it like literally lasted like 4 hours, the most intense thing. Oh. And at that moment I knew I should have left, but I stayed. And then this whole refund thing happened. And that's when I knew I was like, fuck this. Like, I want out. Like, I don't want to keep doing this. Like, I've never been in debt in my life. And I also didn't know anything about like the card or like how that worked with the personal guarantee. So, I told them that I'm gonna leave, and I basically just gave up my equity of the company, took the cash out of the account because it was just an open account, and the profit share agreement that we had, he took like much more than I did, and there was still a lot owed to me. Yep. And I didn't have like really much money at the time, so I was like, I'm just gonna take the cash and basically dip. I consulted with a lawyer to figure out like what's the situation with the debt. Fortunately, we could do like this payment plan, debt management payment plan where it's lower interest and all this. So sorted that out. But I left that, and then I was like, okay, this was around the time when I started the Entrepreneur House. This happened like shortly after I started it, because the Entrepreneur House was never supposed to be like my main business. It was the real estate stuff. But then that happened, and then I was like, oh shit, what do I do now? And that was around the time that we met, actually. Okay. I believe, more or less. From the co-living, to answer your question, because I'm getting there. I know this is like a long answer. From the co-living to what it is today, what happened was I was trying to make it profitable, but at first it wasn't profitable. It was actually like losing money. So I was even like charging up even more credit cards, basically. And I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this model work? And eventually I did get it to work. Is just charging a lot more for the co-living. But the problem was it wasn't super scalable, and it was a lot of work to convince someone to live with you for 30 days. Right. At one point we were charging 10K for that. But even then, the properties in Medellín, there's not like, 10 bedroom properties that are like super nice. So you only can fit like maybe 3-4 people max. And then you got all the expenses. So what ended up happening is Ben in our group came to an event. I actually met Ben. You know Ben, right? Yep. Ben Weir. He came to an event, he met me, and he's like, hey, a lot of people, and I have to give credit to Ben because this wouldn't have happened without him. He came up to me and he's like, I know this guy, Mitch is his name, and he does this coaching thing, and he has this great offer. He's really good at it. You should connect with Mitch and do an event with Mitch. And if you do this event, you could then sell Mitch's offer and take a % of it, and you invite all the people and like do all this stuff. And at the time I was finally like understanding like, how does the event business work? Because the event business, like Tony Robbins, like all these guys, the way that they make money, unless they're charging like the last guest that you just had on, like a huge ticket, the way that they make money is they usually break even or lose money on the front end, but then they have a back end offer. And that's how the event industry usually works, right? So I was learning all this stuff at the time. And then we did this event with Mitch. And this event was one day. It was while I was doing the co-living at the time. One day event. Took me 7 days to organize. Like, it was super simple. And at the end of the event, we did over $100,000 like in one day from him selling. And obviously, he took most, I took a percent of that. And that was more than double profit of what I was making in a whole 30 days. And it was way less the effort. It was one day.
Right.
So I was like, okay, 80-20 here, like clearly events is like the way to go. So we did a couple more events. We had more events where we had someone come in, they made the offer, I took a percent of it, right? A model like that. But I realized that wasn't really sustainable because you can't just always be selling stuff, especially to the same audience, right? There has been people who have bought like multiple things and they've gotten the results as long as it's good. But that just wasn't the model that I wanted. And it was kind of like, it was unpredictable, right? So that is when the shift really happened. And I decided like, hey, let's create this community. And so the community started from me interviewing. I interviewed you. I spoke to you on the phone. I spoke to 80 people, actually. I look back on my calendar. I had 80 interviews in the course of 3 weeks, one-on-one. And I just asked everyone, like, what do you want? Like, what do you want in a community? What kind of events? Like all of these different questions. And I got all this feedback. And the theme that I kept hearing was, I want a curated group. Right. Because at the time it was just like anyone who'd pay me money. Like that was basically it. And I kept hearing that I want a curated group. I want a curated group. I want a room where I walk in and I know everyone in this room is successful. And so that's when I started the membership. And it started, super cheap. And then now today it's gone up, but it's evolved and we've added way more people to it. We've improved the vetting process of how we let people in, just because I've learned from that as well. So yeah, that's the co-living to now community story of how it all happened.
Incredible. I think we need a little empanada intermission.
Let's do another empanada.
And we like to eat some comfort food of empanadas while talking about uncomfortable topics on this podcast. So can you walk me through maybe in the early days of Entrepreneur House, a moment where you felt close to walking away, like maybe this won't work out, and how were you able to shift back into build mode?
Been many moments where I'm like, man, I don't think this is going to work. When we first met, that was the very first season of it. That was also when I just got out of that company and went into like a bunch of debt. And then I did this co-living and that event, which all were negative. So like I went into instant debt and then I just kept racking up more debt. So I ended up like racking up, I think at one point I was like $60K in debt, like on credit cards. So it's like the worst kind of debt you can have. And I look back at it now and can smile and kind of laugh a little bit. But in the moment, it wasn't so funny. Right. It was like, holy shit, like what am I going to do? Yeah. So at the beginning, it was a rough start at the beginning, but I had this goal of like, let me do this. So I wasn't really faced by it at the time. But then I did a second one. So it was the first, it was 30 days. And the second was another 30 days. And I remember talking to my mentor and he's like, hey, I think that you got to humble yourself sometimes and just get a job so you can survive. Because I was like, no, I'm going to grind and like figure this out. And it just wasn't working. So there was that moment and I got a job and then I kind of paused it for a while because I was working with Nick in real estate and stuff. And so I did that and that helped me during that period of time. And then I got back into it again. And then the second moment, I'll give you two moments. So that was the first. The second moment was, this was actually, and actually I don't think I've ever said this public. So this is first time I'm telling anyone.
First time on empanadas.
So this was last year. Let me think. Was this last year? Yeah, this was last year, January. So almost 2 years. This was the fourth and last co-living. Yeah, fourth and last co-living. This was right before I did that event with Mitch and we did 100K. So up until then, pretty much everything I was doing was losing money. There was one event that I did in an art gallery I'm not sure if you were at that one. It was in December, like 3 years ago. But that event, I made $500. That was the first event I actually made money, right? And so everything up until then, I was losing money. So everything it just wasn't working super well for the business. And then I did the co-living. The co-living that last time, it made a little bit of money, but I was still somehow losing money. I don't know why. Like I was just like doing all this extra stuff that I was unnecessary. And so I, at one point, and I had my phone, I have a screenshot of my bank account. I had like 17 cents in my bank account. And I still had some like remaining debt because I was on a payment plan. So I still had like a lot of the debt that I was building up. So I was literally 17 cents in my bank account and like no business model making money, no job, no like income really. And I was hosting, I think you were at this event. We did the big mansion event. Remember that?
Okay.
That was like the
up
kickoff.
in the hills.
Up in the hills.
Yep, I remember
This
that.
was like 2 weeks before this. Okay. So I was like, I got this big event. I need like 10 grand to do it. And I have 17 cents in my bank account. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do this event? And that's when Ben came, and Ben was like, you should do this thing. But in that moment, before all of that happened, I was like like I didn't have any money. I was like, I don't even know how I'm gonna eat. Like I don't even know how I'm gonna get food or like do anything. And so I just remember, and at the time I had my girlfriend, and she was like noticing like something was wrong. And then eventually I told her. I didn't want to tell her because I had this belief. I'm like, if I tell her that I'm broke, she's gonna leave me. But I told her, and she was like really, really. She was really helpful and supportive in that time. So it was great. And then like a week later, the thing with Mitch happened, where we made like a bunch of money, which was like, that's what changed the whole like journey of the path of the entrepreneur house. But up until that moment, I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like I'm going to get a job, or I need to figure something out. And by the universe, or like, I don't know what, but there's always those synchronicities where something comes into your life at that moment where you're at like rock bottom.
Yep.
And that was that thing with Ben coming in and Mitch, and the rest is history. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Love it. Any practices that you put in place now that you've got a bigger business and more weight to carry, but any practices you put in place just for mental wellness and kind of sticking through the grind?
Yeah. For me, and for a lot of people, public speaking is like a fear for people, right? I've done it more and more, so I've gotten better at it. But one thing that I'll do, especially before an event, or like I feel like I'm going to be nervous, or I have to go up and speak in public, I'll do breath work. So I do like a round of like 25 minutes of like very intense breath work. And that I feel like recalibrates my body and my nervous system to be able to be more relaxed. So breath work is one that I'll use in moments where I'm feeling like I'm going to go into an event and speak. The other practices that I do is obviously exercise, like just working out is like huge for your health, your mental health, your stress. So I do that every day. And then meditation. I'm really big into meditation. I love Joe Dispenza. I've been to like 4 of his events and going to keep going to his events. And I'll meditate usually every day. I was doing a lot more. Now I'm probably doing like a minimum of 5, maybe 10 minutes a day. But just those 3 things, meditation, breath work, and exercise, I have found have helped me like with stress and just staying, maintaining the level of stress when you have a lot of pressure, being in business, things go wrong. But also going through those battles, like when I was $1.17 or whatever it was in my bank account, if I can operate fine and host an event when I have no money, like I know that anything else like it's totally fine, right? Yeah. So I just take myself back to those moments where I was like, shit was hitting the fan and like everything was terrible, and then reflect to where I am today, and it's like, wow, this is actually not that bad.
Crazy. As entrepreneurs, we have to go through those moments of having less than $1 in the bank account to kind of realize and be grateful for where we're at now.
It's so true. Yeah.
Well, Thomas, you're a master networker. I remember you gave that master class at one of the previous events. But yeah, what are some actionable tips for founders that are looking to connect with others, whether it's at a conference or a founders meeting? What are some tips that you would give them?
The first tip, this is kind of just a fun one that a lot of people don't know about. When you're at an event, You don't know anyone there. One piece of advice that I give is the most approachable people are actually people in odd pairs. So let's say you go to an event and you see a group and there's 3 people standing there talking, like in this little triangle. If you walk over, it makes the triangle like a complete circle and it feels very natural. Because when you're having a conversation, it's me and you, right? We're an even pair, right? If there was a third person here, it's not, I wouldn't say awkward, but it's a little more difficult to have a 3-way conversation. But as soon as there's 4 people, it becomes way more natural. Same with if there's just one person standing by themselves, right? You go up to that one person, boom, you guys just start talking. Now, the opposite is if it's just me and you and we're having this great conversation and then a third person comes up, right? It kind of breaks that even number, right? So that's the first piece of advice is just going up and not hesitating either. You just just go right into the group and introduce yourself essentially. And then the rest will flow from there. But that's the first piece of advice when you're in a room where you don't know anyone and you want to introduce and meet as many people, go to the odd pairs first. It's not a hard, fast rule. Obviously, you can approach people in pairs of 2 and 4 and etc. But that makes it feel like a lot more natural. I have a few more if you want me to continue.
Let's hear it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first piece. The second piece of advice I'll give is, let's take the scenario again where you're going into a room, an event. You don't know anyone or you know very few people. The best thing to do is you don't want to try to get every person's number. It's just, you're not going to follow, we've all been to events and you collect a bunch of numbers and then it goes nowhere, right? That happens all the time. So your goal isn't to get every person's number. Your goal is though to meet everyone, or at least as many people as you can, as briefly as possible, right? So go to this group, say hi, introduce yourself, then excuse yourself, go to the next. Keep doing that and meeting as many people. What also happens, humans are very social, but they'll see you like interacting with all these different groups and people will start to be like, oh, that guy's like, he must be like important or like know a lot of people or whatever, because they see you go into all these different groups, right? So that's another kind of side effect. But your objective doing that is actually to get to understand like who's in the room and who is it that you can add value to, because that's the most important thing, but also who you're able to connect with on, whatever your goals are. Maybe your goal is to get a client from an event, right? If that's a goal, then you want to meet people who could be your ICP, obviously. So you got to meet as many people. Once you identify who are the people in this room that I want to spend the time with, then go and spend the 80% of your time with those 1 or 2 or 3 individuals throughout the event, so you can foster deeper relationships that then will actually lead to a follow-up, like a podcast or like, I don't know, whatever it may be, right? So don't try to get everyone's number and follow up with everyone, because it's not gonna lead anywhere. Instead, just go deeper with a couple of the people that you find there that you resonate with, that you can add value to, and focus on that.
Makes sense. Amazing, Thomas. And I'm curious as well. I know you're an avid reader. What's one book that you're reading right now that you'd recommend to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I'm reading. I'm listening to actually. I'm listening to a book by Dan Sullivan. It's called Who Not How. I just finished reading his book 10x is easier than 2x, which is a phenomenal book. So I recommend that. But what I'm reading right now is Who Not How, or listening to on Audible. And that book, I don't know if you've read it or heard of it, but the entire concept is essentially, we have these problems in our business and we always say, how can we fix this? Let's say I want to get on 1,000 podcasts in 1 year, for example. This is one that they use in the book. So you could say, how can I do this? Instead, their whole philosophy is, don't ask how, ask who do I need to bring on to help me do this, right? So you hire someone that then does all the podcast outreach, does all the appointment setting, does all this, and that's going to lever your time so much more. So Who Not How is a book that I'm listening to currently, and I really enjoying it, and it's a really good book. And I've been recommended, actually, Nicholas Miller. I don't know if you know Nick in our group, but he recommended that book. And I started both of the books that I just read, the 10x is easier than 2x and Who Not How. So that book I would highly recommend.
Okay. I'm constantly battling between whether it's I need to find the right hire and fill that who, or just adjust the process. If there's, like a client project going on where there's deadlines aren't getting hit, is that like we need a project manager to overseeing them, or is that a process adjustment we need to make internally with some automations to make for like to make sure everyone's aligned on deadlines? So that's something that I'm constantly thinking through for my business.
Yeah, I would say that people is the hardest thing in business.
Yep.
Dealing with different personalities, and reading this book has made me realize like the time that most people spent, including myself, on finding the right people, hiring, onboarding, and training them. And we did our podcast like a few weeks ago, and we were talking about hiring, how to find talent, onboarding. You're giving me great advice on that. I just realized like, man, I'm not spending nearly as much time as I should be to really get the best people and onboard them as best as I possibly can. So I would agree. It's a challenge. We're always like, is this the right person? Is this not the right person? And I think when that happens, it's not the right person if you're questioning it. That's what I found. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no, as they say, right? But I would 100% agree. Like the team and everything, it's definitely a challenge.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Thomas, this is a question I like to ask everyone at the end. But what's one strongly held belief that you have that you think 99% of other founders would disagree with? What's your best hot take?
That's a great question. What I would say that maybe a lot of founders would disagree with is that you really don't need discipline to be successful. What do I mean by that? So a lot of people say you need to have your routine and be consistent and all this stuff. Running this entrepreneur group, I find that there's so many people inside of the group with so many different personalities and so many different lifestyles and so many different habits. And yes, discipline does obviously help, but some of the stuff that some of these founders do, if I did, I would not be able to run a business, and vice versa, right? For example, like I know this guy and he's like I don't know how he does it. He's going on so many dates. Like it's insane, like 10 dates a week. And he's partying, doing drugs. And yet he has this massively successful business, right? And maybe he doesn't have discipline in this area, but he does in other areas, right? So maybe the discipline thing isn't the right way to kind of frame that. But what I found is that, and Britt Lefko talks about this too, actually, is there is your way, and then there's this person's way, and there's everyone else's way. So there's not really one way, and people can become successful even when they're doing things that if you were to do, maybe would not help you, if that makes sense.
Okay. So just find your way.
That's my hot take.
Awesome. Great, Thomas. Well, where can people find out more about you and Entrepreneur House online?
Absolutely. So on Instagram and on YouTube, you can find my personal page, Thomas Geib, Thomas. Thomas Geib is spelled Geib, as in boy. And then obviously the Entrepreneur House, you can find us at entrehouse.com. That's spelled ENTRE house, HOUSE.com.
Amazing. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for coming on today and grabbing some empanadas with me and sharing your story.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Salud. Cheers.
Salud.